in any subject. My name is Christy Snyder, and I'll be your session host. I'm here to support Teresa, your session presenter, offer technical assistance, as well as share the session evaluation and certificate information at the end of the session. Please don't hesitate to use the chat to ask questions or to request technical support. And at this time, I'll turn it over to you, Teresa.
Great. Thank you, Christy. It's good to see you. I see lots of familiar names and faces in the chat. It's good to see you all. So my name is Teresa. I will jump into the slides in just a second. I do want you to know up front that this will be a working session. So get your hands on the keyboard, get ready, because I'm going to ask you to contribute a decent amount to the thinking. And I am excited to be here. This is one of my favorite things to think through. So I will jump into the slide deck, but I will also drop some links in the chat, etc. as I go. And actually, before I get started, let me just make sure everyone has access to the slide deck too for you. There we go. Oops, sorry. Can't copy and paste. Okay, so jump right in. And Christy, you did a great job on that excessively long title. I was like, holy cow, did I really write that? I wrote all of that. So we are going to think today about leveraging literacy and what it looks like across any subject area. And I think it's a really important discussion. I saw a variety of roles in the chat, so I will try to keep that in mind as we go through today's session. Before I jump right in, tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Teresa Gibson, and I am currently the Executive Director of the North Carolina Science and Engineering Fair Foundation. It's a nonprofit that helps to support students to get enrichment through scientific research and engineering design. But I am also most recently part of the Friday Institute for Educational Innovation, and that is where I came to connect with the Niswonger Foundation. I've worked with the foundation for, I think, 6 years now, initially in a grant to help support leaders in moving to blended learning in their schools, and now through the Rural Life Grant, which I'm excited to be a part of. I will give you a little bit of information about what that Rural Life Grant looks like as we go through. If you haven't yet clicked on view materials for this session, where you just joined the session, right below that there's a link that says view materials. It will give you access to the materials for today. I will also drop links in the chat if you have not yet pulled up the deck so that you can click directly on them as we need them. One of the documents I will ask you to contribute to directly. So while I go through the goals and a little bit of background research about literacy, if you would pull up the slide deck, that will be helpful to you as we go along. If you were just in my leadership session, I'm going to show you the same research, so you should be well versed. But the goals for today are to understand the importance of literacy to students, and that will be really just the first 5 minutes with me going through the background research. I think it's always a good way to start your day with the why we're doing this and why literacy matters beyond the ELA classroom. I want also for us to think together about how literacy is already being supported. Sometimes we're doing things and calling them to the front of our mind helps to reinforce that we continue doing them. So think about how we're already supporting literacy in instruction, or if you are a leader, I saw there's some school leaders on this, how it is already being supported in the classrooms in your building. And then we're going to explore some new strategies to support literacy in instructional design. Some of those strategies will come from me and some will come from you. I think you'll be surprised at how many of them you already know and can contribute. So to get us started, my connection with the foundation and literacy has couched within this Rural Life Grant, where we're thinking about how we can best support students through supporting their literacy, but also through personalizing learning in all of the content areas. And when we pull that all together, we come to the interventions that we've designed for the Rural Life Grant. And a lot of the research that I'm about to present comes from the lit review we did in writing this grant. But to get us started, just thinking about the importance of literacy, and I don't think it will come as a surprise to anyone on the session this morning that it is tightly linked and correlated with graduation rates. And if you think about a child that is struggling with literacy, and as they progress through the school years, it gets increasingly more difficult and almost deflating to go throughout a day without being able to successfully read and write at the level that's expected of you. So imagining how that can become increasingly frustrated throughout the years in the system, we do see this where the lower the literacy rate, the more likely a child is to drop out of school, to not make it successfully to graduation. And then specifically, one of the important pieces to the grant in Northeastern Tennessee was considering the impact of poverty on literacy. And what the research finds, and these are hyperlinks to the actual research if you have the deck, so that you can look at some of the graphs and supporting evidence behind these claims. But what we found, what research has found, is that literacy, of course, has a huge impact on graduation rates. But what happens is when it's compounded with poverty, we actually see this amplifying effect, so that students who struggle with literacy and live in poverty are more likely than students who just struggle with literacy to drop out of school. And it doesn't have to be poverty their entire life, but if it is, you see a significant difference. It rises, it says on the slide, 32% if they spend more than half of their childhood in poverty. So thinking through that lens of why this is reinforced as extremely important, there's poverty levels that are of concern. And then thinking about how early we know this. And it has been long known that we can predict from as early as elementary school who is likely to graduate and who is likely to struggle with literacy enough that it will impact their graduation. And finally, the Rural Life Grant was specific to middle school because there are really strong indicators by sixth grade, really strong as in 75%, 3 and 4 chance of dropping out of high school if in sixth grade only one of these things on this slide, only one of these 4 things is true. And so thinking about, if you reflect on your school or your class, depending on what role you are, you can probably off the top of your head think about who these kids might be that we already know that there's a 75% chance that they won't make it. And having the flip side of this be the hope that if we know early, we can provide the right interventions across our school and our community to help support this child in staying in school and start to shift this number for the positive, so that we know this early indicator is a sign that we can take advantage of and help support this student to not be part of that 75% and to make that 75% lower and lower each year. So thinking through, that is, with this idea of literacy and graduation rate and poverty rates and these early indicators, how important it is that in each piece of a child's day, we are supporting their ability to become a literate citizen. And that means a lot of things. And it's not necessarily all ELA instruction, and it's not only on the ELA teachers, it's on all of us to help these students succeed. And this is where we start to see the hope, and how can we manage this so that we're supporting these students. And the research bears out that if we can reach every child every day with just 6 experiences, we will see a great improvement in the literacy rates in our kids. And so this is like the big picture, school-wide, school community. If a child goes through a day of their life, what should they experience? And these are the 6, we call them the 6 elements of effective reading instruction. And they come from a research synthesis of many, many, many years of the research saying the same things and us still struggling to reach our kids. But the 6 things that are important for a child to experience every day, and I mean K-12 a child, is that they have some choice throughout the day in what they're reading. They don't have to choose everything they're reading and writing, but they have to have some choice. That they're able to access a text that they can read accurately. And here, accuracy is more about fluency than comprehension. As you'll see, the next step is comprehension. They have to also have access to a text they can comprehend. Now, we know that comprehension is important and access to text you can comprehend is important, but we also need to remember the flip side, that they need to read above, below, and at their current level of comprehension to improve these rates for accuracy and comprehension. Every student every day should have the opportunity to write something meaningful. And again, that doesn't have to be in their ELA classroom. It can be in any classroom, any experience throughout the day. And it should be meaningful, not just to society, it should be personally meaningful to the student. And then students need the opportunity to think about their reading and writing and talk about their reading and writing with peers. So not just to write a reflection, but to have time to kind of process what they've read and written with their peers. And this is important, especially in the adolescent and high school years, middle and high school years. Peer-to-peer conversation, it gives them that time to process and construct new meaning and to question the meaning they did construct out of what they read and wrote. And then this read aloud piece, which is every child every day should hear a fluent adult reading. And this actually helps to improve their fluency. And this is something we've known about modeling for a long time. But what tends to happen in practice is the older and older students get, the less and less they have the opportunity to hear an adult in the building read aloud to them. And it doesn't matter what fluent adult they hear reading aloud. It doesn't always have to be the teacher if they're hearing somebody in a video reading aloud. As long as it's a fluent adult, they need to hear a read aloud every day. And so thinking about how does that look in our school and across a day, are we hitting these 6 things in our classrooms, in our hallways, in our activities? How are we giving kids choice, the opportunity for accuracy, comprehension, meaningful writing, peer-to-peer conversation, and hearing a fluent adult read aloud? This is the big picture. This is like literacy across my entire school. I have to hit at least one of these each and every day.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
When or whoever else is out there, we have adopted doing unit plans.
Yes.
So when you're talking about choice and meaningful writing, if it's, 7th grade is what I teach.
Sure.
Not all unit plans are great to teach. And but they tell us, don't veer off this. This is exactly what you do. Don't do anything else. This is what you do. Okay. So how does a teacher, we're going to do this inside of our units, but are we really giving the kids time for this freedom of choice like you're talking about and their meaningful writing? Does everything have to be, they just have to be able to utilize it in that unit and we're doing what they need? Or are we going to give them the ability to think for themselves outside of the box of things that they like to learn and do?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's the common concern thinking about literacy across the curriculum and choice especially. And there are small things that we can do that allow kids the time to write in ways that are personally meaningful to them. And one of the ways that I think is a small shift in questioning that allows them to write in reflection is asking the question, what does this mean to me? And so what is your content area?
ELA, 7th grade.
ELA. And so asking them after they've read a piece, does this change my mind? Does this change my heart? Does this change how I'm going to act? Like those are really powerful questions, and letting them respond either peer-to-peer conversation or in writing, depending on what works in your unit plan. So they might not always have a choice in what they had to read, which I know is really common. Giving that opportunity is important too, but finding ways to give them a way to connect to themselves. When we read things in any context, asking ourselves that question about, does this change my thinking? Does this change how I want to behave? Do I have questions about what this is? Those are all things that will be personally meaningful to a student. And so finding ways to hit those 6 high-level elements can be built directly into a unit plan. And then we're going to go into some smaller shifts you can make in questioning or in design up front that help give kids a little bit of leeway within the constructs of content too. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, and thank you for asking. That's a great segue into where I'm going next. It's perfect. So when we think about literacy skills, we often will think specifically about, okay, well, this is tone, this is writing, and what are we trying to do as this expository? But there's also other links and things that are supporting literacy skills that don't have those words attached to them. And so what we're going to do is talk about kind of major literacy skills, and we're going to base this on Harvey and Gudis. So there are a lot of versions of this, but this one I personally like because it tends to be words that we all have been familiar with, regardless of content area, that we can think about as we design instruction. And so these are strategies for active reading, and I'm going to ask you to kind of expand your mind as you think about engaging with text and reading and writing beyond the point where some of these skills can be built when they're not reading a book. Sometimes these skills are built when they're watching a video. Sometimes these skills are built when they're reacting to an image. Sometimes these skills are built when they're having a verbal conversation. But it's thinking about, these are reading skills that we need to teach kids how to build in themselves, how to foster. And a lot of it is actually metacognitive activity. So beyond actually reading the word and decoding, these are skills that happen in the brain. They're thinking skills. And so these 6 big buckets of strategies to help students understand their reading better can be applied in all of the content areas. And so I'm not going to go through each one, but I am going to pause and let anybody say, hey, can you talk about this one a little bit, because I'm not sure what it means on the slide. So out of these 6, go ahead and jump in the chat or on the mic, whatever you're comfortable with, if you have any questions about.
I know I'll be the one to jump out there. I don't care.
Sure.
I know with my students, we have a huge ESL population. We have a huge social disadvantage.
Mm-hmm.
It is really hard for them to connect because some of them, they have no idea, never seen it, and have no clue. Determining the importance, that's really hard for my kids.
Mm-hmm.
And to get them to like visualize, because some of them for the first time has seen. I've actually had kids for the first time just see a swing set.
Yes.
I mean, and to them, the majority of my kids, their importance is eating.
Mm-hmm.
And making it through the day.
Yep. Safety.
My importance is I want them to realize what they get today is going to take them above their situation that they're in. Mm-hmm. So how can I meet that I need help meeting that in the middle and getting that through their heads.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that is going to be around motivation, right? And thinking about when kids are having trouble visualizing, this is where talking about moving beyond text is going to be important. And so kids that are having trouble visualizing can be given images or short video clips to go with it that is going to provide that activate and connect. Background knowledge is so important in all instruction, regardless of content area. And so thinking about how we can take advantage of modern media to help build some contextual understanding. But also, the more kids in the classroom can share stories with each other, the more cultural context we're going to be building. And so thinking about some of those underlying strategies that aren't specific to literacy, but are going to build their literacy skills by exposing them to multiple cultures, exposing them to experiences they may not have been able to have in Northeastern Tennessee, are going to be really important. And that's where we're going to go with this, is student thinking skills for literacy can be built in any content area. And this piece is where I'm going to ask you all to hurt your brains a little bit. I'm going to get started. When I was in a classroom, I was a high school math teacher. And so I'm going to get started by taking these 6 categories, and I'm going to crosswalk them to what that might look like in a math classroom. And I'm going to do it on the basis of what skills students need to use that when they're thinking that happen in other content areas that also have to be used when they're reading and writing. All right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to pop, this is going to like close your eyes if you get seasick. I'm going to pop off of this slide. I'm going to put this link in the chat, and I'm going to ask you all to join me in the document. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start to make connections explicit. And I put some topic areas up there, but we can also add. I put a note for myself. I don't currently have world languages, health, PE on here, but all of these pieces are relevant. So if you'll come with me to this document, what I'm going to do is model for you how I would do this for mathematics. And then I'm going to give you carte blanche to add into any, and we can also add columns, so other topic areas if that's helpful, but to add into any box that you think you have an idea for. So this does not have to be your content area, your purview, I want you to jump in and say, oh, I know a thinking skill in this content area that makes sense. And so just to give you a model, I did mathematics. You can add to mathematics. You can put question marks. But in an ELA classroom, we might be monitoring comprehension. In a mathematics classroom, we're often engaging with things like word problems that we have to help students to understand. And so our thinking aloud and our breaking down of that context, they're going to hear a fluent adult read, but they're also going to have their comprehension supported. And we're going to be building some vocabulary skills all at the same time. And something that's underutilized in mathematics classroom is understanding the work of others. And think about when you're reading, how important that is. And thinking about the language of mathematics, understanding what someone wrote and why happens in math classrooms all the time. All we have to do is have kids try to explain to each other the reasoning that they used as they wrote it. So why did you write that? Okay, well, what did that mean when you wrote it? Those are questions we want them to ask when they're reading anything or writing anything. Why am I writing this and what does it mean? If we start supporting that verbally in math class, when they walk into ELA and they walk into science, they're already practicing the metacognition they need to be a more literate citizen. So I will keep talking through math. I see you guys are jumping in. I really appreciate you doing that. I'll pull out a couple more math and then I'll stop talking and let you guys go to town in this document. Everybody should have edit access. Activate and connect. We were just talking about this. Jeanette was asking. Kids walk into math classes all the time without the prior knowledge. We have to be able to figure out how to build some prior knowledge sometimes, right? And we also have to build on wherever they're at to build up the concepts. Now, so for them, it's helping them think through, how are you going to show me what you already know to help me bring in the right scaffolds for you? And this happens in every subject area. But also, words and context are problems in math too. I have certainly been in a high school math classroom where we're working on probability, and the classic terrible example of decks of cards. Well, I'm Italian and I grew up with cards in my hand. We played cards in my house all the time. But a lot of my kids in school had no idea there were 4 suits, 13 cards in a suit. They didn't know any of that. And I didn't see it coming because I didn't think about how to help them show me what their prior knowledge was so I could help them understand the problems I was going to put in front of them. So I'm going to stop talking and let everybody start to contribute, and then we're going to work as a group to talk about kind of how these things crosswalk to your content area or other content areas. And really feel free, if you are thinking about health or if you're thinking about world language, add a column and we will talk it through. And try to push yourself out of your own content area. Where do you think these things are supported and how? How might they be supported? And if anyone's having trouble accessing the doc, you can let us know in the chat and we'll try to help you out. Or on the mic, however you're comfortable. And it's more than one page, so if you scroll down, you're going to find the other two. All right, so if you have not read some other columns, I encourage you at this moment to just take a minute and read what other folks are putting in there. If you can justify your reasoning, you're correct. There's no real wrong answer if you can actually expand and think about a literacy skill that you are supporting in doing this work with students. So go ahead, take a look across the content areas, start to visualize a whole school supporting literacy skills. And this document will remain accessible to you. Throughout. Oops. And what you can see, hopefully, is that there are already a lot of ways that you as educators are supporting literacy in your content area. And so right now I'm going to offer the opportunity. I know some of you are reading and writing, and I apologize. I'm going to offer the opportunity for some folks to share. If you'd like to share, like as you filled this out or as you saw other people fill this out, how is literacy already being supported in your content area? Or if you want, you can share about something another teacher in your building, or I know some of you are school leaders and coaches, what you've seen happening in any content area. It doesn't have to be ELA, that you felt supported literacy. What's already out there and happening? So you can jump on the mic or add to the chat, whichever you want.
Oh, is that sound?
And if you need help finding that mic, it should be in your bottom left.
Making literacy relatable and connected to students, relating it to their real life experience so it has impact.
Yeah, bringing it back to like, what is the, oops, sorry. I'm clicking all over the place. It's changing screens. Bringing it back to what does this mean in your life? How is this meaningful to you? That's really important. And it's an important motivator for kids too. It makes things feel like they're going to happen. Christy added classroom libraries in all content areas. Yes, I love to see the libraries across content areas where you walk into a science classroom and you see that shelf of books, and some of them can be science specific and some of them can be nonfiction or fiction. And just, if you're me, it's going to be a fantasy novel because I'm a fantasy junkie. What else? What else is already happening? I see from this beautiful document that you all are doing a ton of stuff, or that you're at least relating back to a ton of these things. So let me pull this back, grab some of these ideas, ways to pull it. And I actually want to talk about, so I know there's only a couple of art folks on here, but I really am excited that they're pulling in some of these pieces. So thinking about monitoring comprehension in the performing arts, when you're doing a performance, thinking about the intent of the artist, what they were trying to create, can be a really important piece. And it doesn't mean you have to recreate the character or the music the way that the artist did, but trying to understand that shift so that you can hold the piece with integrity, or so that you can intentionally shift the meaning behind it. Because as an artist, sometimes that's your choice, right? But understanding the original piece and the intent of the artist is important. In the social sciences, we have comparing historical events like the Boston events, like the demonstrations going on today. And that's a really important, critical, current event that's happening right now. So and depending on the age of the kids, that conversation or engagement might look very different. But thinking about how our students right now are reading a lot of opposing perspectives about the current climate and the protests and demonstrations happening. And so how can we help them to build their understanding of social science while building their media literacy skills, where they can look at these opposing opinions and really try to construct their own personal meaning about what is happening? How do they feel about that? What's important? What was important in this article that they read, and what was left out of this article that they read? And what do we really know and understand about what happened at the Boston Tea Party? Yes, this must be science. Green is science, yeah. So asking questions, using noticing and noting signposts to think deeper. And that's so important, not just in the sciences, but it's really important in mathematics. It's important across social sciences. It's also important, like as we do recognitions of patterns, etc., in visual arts and performing arts. Thinking, why is this happening? Why are they using alliteration here? And can I change any words in this speech I'm about to redo? Or can I change this dance? Is it changing the meaning? So thinking through all of these connecting points that we as educators are already using, as I'm sorry, this thing is in my way, Zoom. Trying to get back to my slide deck. So thinking about, these are the thinking skills that are going to be important for educator or for students as they engage with text, but also as they engage with performing arts and other pieces in science, articles, nonfiction articles, or like some fantastic thing they see on Twitter that is saying there's an asteroid about to hit the earth, and how can they make sense of that, and should they be worried? So thank you for jumping in and doing that. Right now, I'm going to ask you, just in your own head, to think about a favorite lesson or activity that you already do. And if you're an administrator, think about one that you've seen, or think back to when you were in your own classroom, something that you loved. And what literacy skills were necessary for your students to be successful in that activity? So just take a minute to think about that. And we're going to do something with it. Okay. So hopefully there's an activity at the forefront of your mind. It's not one you're going to have to live with for the rest of your life, so it's okay. It doesn't have to be the most special one, but one that you really enjoy doing. And we're going to think about some small shifts in different content areas that can help to support literacy skills more explicitly. And you might be thinking about a lesson with that yardstick and thinking, I've already got this. I already saw the literacy skills I'm supporting. So if you're in that boat, think about how you can share that. Before we jump into you talking with each other about small shifts, I want to give you some suggestions for small tweaks that can be made to activities with students in a bunch of different content areas. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to push you into breakout rooms to talk with each other to generate some ideas for your favorite lesson or activity and how you might be able to shift it in a small way. In mathematics, something, and I think I already talked about this when I did the sheet, but something that we often forget to do is have kids help to understand each other's work and reasoning. And that's really powerful. It gives them that peer-to-peer conversation about something they've written or something they're reading, somebody else's work, as opposed to evaluating themselves or just thinking right or wrong, but thinking about, do I understand what and why this person wrote this, or why I wrote this? In science, considering two different perspectives on an emergent or historical theory. And right now with coronavirus, watching science happen live where they're coming out and saying, this is probably what's happening. And then 2 weeks later, they're saying we have new studies, it's now different. Helping kids to understand that that's how science develops. And they're going to read a lot of theory. How do we make sense of divergence in theories? And how do we decide for ourselves which one has enough evidence to go with? Social sciences, we can research and debate historical events. I love a debate. I do debates in my math classes. So thinking about how can we add a little bit of debate instead of just this is how it happened. Do we agree with how this happened? What would you have done? Can you do some background investigation into the context of what was happening around that era, and which side would you have fallen on? In the fine arts, exploring themes across a period of in some art history and that rationale behind the fine arts. That also, like, why did the pictures of fruit become really popular? How do you feel about that? What was going on in the world that made that a thing? Health and PE, something I'm encouraged to do as an adult, start a food or exercise journal or blog, or just have them start reading some of them and questioning some of them. Like, is keto diet good? Do you think that's a safe way to go? How do you feel about it? World languages. One of the things I've always found interesting about world language, especially I was engaged in French in high school, is that not every language works the same. And so changing just small things in other languages can be treated very differently than when we change small things in English. And so comparing the two and thinking about, okay, well, tone is very different in another language. In CTE, developing and evaluating technical instructions, or from an existing business. I said from the school, you probably have to get very open administration to be thinking about that. But thinking about, does the way this is written up, is this a good process? Do we need to evaluate it, change it? Do we need to have this written up? What's missing? So those are just some like quick off the cuff thoughts about small things we can integrate into our instructional design. And so now what I'm going to do is ask you to connect the two. You don't have to use my shifts, but thinking back to those literacy skills, you can either think about the 6 things a child should engage with in a day, or the 6 classroom level skills that we can shift to student thinking skills. And I'm going to give you a minute before I ask Christy to throw you into breakout rooms to think about your favorite lesson or activity. What small shifts do you think you could make to be intentional about supporting literacy across your task or activity? So right now, thinking for yourself, and then I'll give you instructions for the breakout room. All right, so what I'm going to ask now is for Christy, I don't know if it's you or John, to put folks into breakout rooms. And what I'm going to ask you to do in the breakout room is you're going to have 10 minutes in that room to talk through your idea. And so just say, this is my lesson, I'm thinking about trying this. And then you can ask one question. You're going to have just about 2 minutes each, maybe a minute and a half to share. And so please try to be respectful and not keep the mic for too long. But like say, I'm an art teacher, I have this, I'm thinking about integrating this. What do you guys think? And get some feedback on your idea. So before I just send you off into breakouts, I want to make sure everybody understands the instruction, because in Zoom, I can't go into all the rooms. And so I won't be in there with you. I'm seeing people sharing their small shifts already. This is awesome. So if you have any questions about what to do in the breakout room, go ahead and drop it in the chat or jump on the mic. And so in the room, you'll have about a minute and a half each to share and get a little bit of feedback. All right. And I don't see any questions. So Christy, if you want to toss them into breakout rooms, it sounds violent. And I will try to pop in and out if Christy can make it happen. Zoom doesn't always behave. Or John. Is it John doing it? Okay.
They're going right now, Teresa.
Thank you, John.
They have to accept it's what happens. It pops up on their screen and they accept it and away they go.
Okay. All right, and if you have any trouble getting into a room, you can go ahead and ping us in the chat and we will help you out.
Mm-hmm. Most rooms have 7, a few had 6. It looks like a few people have not accepted the invitation. That's why it says not joined, okay?
Okay. And let me see. It looks
Now,
like
if
there's
you would
just
like,
2.
we can add, Christy, Linda, Bethany to a room.
Yeah.
I can make you the host and you can jump between them.
All right. What do you guys think?
Do.
If you make me the host, do I have to time it too?
Yeah, what happens is if I make you the host, then I lose control of getting people out of the rooms.
Okay.
There's a button when you become host, it says close all rooms.
Yeah.
And it gives you a minute once you hit that button.
After I hit the button.
Automatically the rooms will close and everybody will come back out at that point.
And if I'm the host, I can put myself in and out of a room?
Yes, anytime.
Okay. Yeah. Do any of you ladies want to go into a room and listen?
Or you can stay.
I can do whatever. I can go either way. Feel free to throw me in a room somewhere.
Okay.
Whatever you need, Teresa.
All right.
Yeah, John, why don't you stay the host and just toss us in a room and then pull us out when it's time.
You're going in room 1.
Oh, wow.
Christy, you're going in room 2. Linda, you're going in room 3. And Teresa, you're going to go in room 4. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
And in about 10, I'll check back in with room 4 and see when you want to come back out. Okay.
Yes, I appreciate that very much. And yes, yeah, I know that you know, you could be on Tuesday morning, Thursday, Friday. Oh, well, that's another one on the night that was saying, I just said it.
Maybe that's a good homogeneous grouping.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other thoughts for Stacy or questions? Does anyone else have an idea they want to throw out there for some input?
Yeah. Yeah, well, let's just
Trying to think.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you have any suggestions on how to get started with this? If you have like a grade band level that aren't like, how do you encourage that grade level, group of teachers to come together and start doing this?
Well, I think that in order for true collaboration to happen, you have to find a common goal. And so I think finding a learning objective that easily there's John. John, are you pulling everybody back? He's on mute. Yep, here come the other rooms. Perfect. All right, well, welcome back. I hope that you all had a good time in the breakout rooms and had some good, useful discussion. I know we were thinking about getting started in the room I was in. I'm gonna go back to screen sharing so you all can see the slide. And what we're gonna do, because I probably talked a little more than I should have, is we are going to combine our takeaways with our reflection for the day. So we're going to skip that one slide and we're going to go straight to reflection so that Christy has time to do the evaluation and certificate piece. And what I want you to do is think for yourself and then add to the chat or jump on the mic and share out for the whole group. How does supporting literacy also support students in constructing content knowledge in your subject? So these skills, these thinking skills, and these literacy skills that we're building, how does that help them to better access the content in every subject? And you can jump in the chat or on a microphone, whichever you prefer. Yeah, Marcy says it definitely supporting vocabulary. Oh, yes, go ahead.
Hi. And I've enjoyed like having the students look at symbols and stuff within the artwork and to connect that to themselves. I kind of wrote that in that chart too. But I think it supports the literacy, but also helps them understand why people were doing what they did in the artwork. So.
Yeah. Yeah, art has so much rich history and context around it that it's so important to help them see that connection. It's not just arbitrary things that people felt like painting or drawing.
Right.
And Erica says it helps the students build neural connections, right? Thinking back to that brain science and the learning science and how it really is going to strengthen those synapses. Robin's sharing about strong comprehension skills are important in both subjects I teach, science and social studies. Yeah, and I think any subject where a student can ask themselves, do I really understand what I read or just wrote? It's extremely important. And thinking back to that head, heart, hand, does it change anything for me in my thinking, in what I believe, or in how I'm going to act? Such an important literacy connection in all content areas. Yep. Yes, Lori, connecting it back to that personal impact and thinking about themselves as a person. Well, I believe I am out of time, and so I am going to toss this back to Christy. Thank you all so much for joining and for working together this morning. I think when we think together, we get a lot better strategies and results. So I really appreciate you jumping in with me today. And with that, I'll throw it to Christy.
Thank you for attending the Virtual Summer Institute session. Please take our 1-minute survey. This allows us to do a couple of things. To reflect on your thoughts about the session. For one, we're always looking for ways to improve, and also to collect your information if you would like to receive a certificate of attendance for the session. I think the evaluation certificate request link for this section, yes, John has put that in the chat. You can find that there.
Great.
Teresa?
Yes, thank you so much. And just a note, I did do mini lessons in the leadership session right before this. If you wanted to see a sample math lesson and a sample social studies lesson, if you want to go and check out that recording, you can see some sample lessons there. And the materials are available if you just scroll up and look at that session link on the webpage. With that, yes.
Teresa, I was going to add that I also dropped a quick link back in our chat to that shared thinking space. where we shared so many ideas across the different subject areas. That might be a great resource to bookmark, and
Yes.
it's also in the folder, of course.
And that will stay public facing. If you want to make your own notes on it, just go ahead, do file, make a copy, and you'll have your own version forever. So thank you all so much. I had a wonderful morning.
Thank you. You're great.
Thank
Everybody was great.
Bye, everybody.